Трошки краще.
Зараз супер.
Шліф.
Good afternoon, my name is Hola Tamanova, and I want to thank everybody who joins us in Ukraine Media Center Ukraine Forum. Today is day 715 of the full-scale invasion of our homeland by Russian occupiers. And now we will be talking about the situation in the south of Ukraine. Joining us online is Natalia Humeniuk, the head of the United Coordinating Press Center of Security and Defense Forces of Ukraine. Miss Natalia, good afternoon. Glory to Ukraine, good afternoon. Glory to the heroes, Miss Natalia. Yesterday, our country suffered another massive missile strike inflicted by the Russians. We know that many of our cities and smaller towns and villages were damaged all across the regions. South was no exception, and today we see that Russians continue shelling the Kherson and Mykolaiv regions. So what is the situation for the time being? Well, unfortunately, this night the enemy inflicted another drone strike on the southern regions of the country. They were focusing mostly on Odessa and Mykolaiv and Vinnytsia regions. Basically, that's the usual tactics of the enemy. They've taken a small pause and then they resume the strikes, focusing on the regions in the depth from the forward edge of the battle area, but those which are involved in supply of the units operating in the forward edge of the battle area. So this night the enemy attacked Odessa region from the equator of the Black Sea. The Shahed drones were coming from the equator, focusing on the shoreline. We understand that the enemy cannot leave alone the port infrastructure, and the tactical aviation attempts to continue dropping the guided aviation bombs to the equator of the Black Sea is something that we documented yesterday as well. So we were able to destroy 5 drones in Odessa region. However, we couldn't avoid the targets being hit. An educational institution was damaged, and another construction in progress was damaged too nearby that facility, that educational facility. There were casualties among the patrol police. 2 of them were injured while trying to provide medical aid to the injured civilians. So they were hit by a blast injury and subsequently hospitalized. In Mykolaiv region, after the preliminary strike with the missiles, this night the enemy was terrorizing the region with the Shahed drones. They damaged the industrial infrastructure facility plus another sports recreation infrastructure facility. Fortunately, we have no details about any casualties, which I hope means that people have proceeded to the shelter, having heard the signal of air raid alert. In Vinnytsia region, air defense forces worked to defend the region against the strike of Shahed drones, the debris of which caused fire in an industrial facility. However, the situation was under control and the firefighters were able to put out the fire promptly without casualties. So this was the night in those regions in the south. However, in the forward edge of the battle area, the enemy tried to enable the tactical aviation, dropping the guided aviation bombs. They were bombarding Zmiivka, and also the enemy tried to inflict strikes on the regional capital itself. Unfortunately, there were 3 casualties, and such a terror using drones of other configuration, I mean FPV drones continues, plus the enemy uses the drones to which they attach the shrapnel munitions, and still they continue focusing on the places of concentration of civilians, places of operation of the special services, which mitigate the consequences of enemy strikes, which again emphasizes the terroristic nature of the strikes. Ms. Natalia, so what is the situation in the left bank of Kherson region? You've mentioned that there is our flag installed in Krinky, which is very inspiring news for us. So what is the situation in the east bank? I mean, something that we can talk about. Well, the situation remains difficult, and the presence of Ukrainian flag there is a signal for the local civilians that the armed forces of Ukraine continue holding their line, their positions. They're not going anywhere, no matter how bad the Russian publics want it. And we talk about the continuation of the battle work on our end, but the enemy does not cease its assault attempts. There were 4 such attempts during the last night, and what's characteristic about that is that they continue the embargo on the use of the materials, so they use so-called cannon fodder assaults, and they try to save the material in this way. Ms. Natalia, it came up to our attention recently that in Oleshki, in temporarily occupied territory, the Russians cynically killed a married couple as if, in their opinion, a husband in the couple was somehow involved with our armed forces. Do we know any news, any details about the situation with the crimes being committed by the Russians in temporarily occupied territories in relation to our citizens? Unfortunately, it's very difficult to obtain any faithful information. However, we continue to cooperate with the resistance movement and with the yellow strips, with guerrilla movement. Yeah, they continue providing us the information about such crimes committed by the Russians. Unfortunately, it's a stable phenomenon there. They search for the people loyal for Ukraine. It's a normal everyday practice for them. They continue implementing forceful passportization there. They're preparing for the so-called elections that will require most electorate possible from them. Also, they continue the concealed mobilization, because every single citizen who obtains this small book and who is of male gender and conscription age becomes a human resource for replenishment of their occupational troops. We were saying that they continue reinforcing the screening measures, they deploy more block post checkpoints, they continue checking the passports, the gadgets of the citizens. They try to impose the citizenship in exchange for humanitarian aid or medical aid. So this is this type of utility blackmailing, so to say, that works there. Ms. Natalia, talking about the situation in Black Sea and Sea of Azov, what's going on there? Is there any presence of missile carriers out there? The situation in the both seas is mostly dictated by the weather conditions. The intense storm did not allow the occupiers to bring the surface missile carriers on duty, but during the last missile attack they used a submarine missile carrier. Having used 3 caliber type missiles, they were rolled down by the air defense forces, but the occupier continues reminding them that they have this potential that they can use against us. For the time being, what we observe is a frigate in the equator in the Black Sea on duty, General Makarov, which can carry up to 8 caliber missiles ready being used, but it keeps close to Novorossiysk, where the weather is a little bit more calm, not like 4-5 points in the open theater of the Black Sea. And it means that the enemy is bristling the weapons deep enough against the threat, about the threat again, which means the increased level of threat from the equator of the Black Sea. And the last question about the operation of our transport corridor in the Black Sea. We keep hearing that within the last couple of months we reached the pre-war export volumes. Is it really so that everything is under control and pretty calm in the corridor? Well, no, the situation is not calm just until that moment that the enemy feels oppressed in the equator of the Black Sea. They have advantage in the air. That's the objective reality. The activity of tactical aviation of the enemy poses a threat for navigation corridor. But we see that the vessel owners and the members of the navigation process, they trust our security and defense forces. They understand that before we ensure the passage of vessels, we try to check the security situation, and using all the available resources, we support the operation of the corridor. And the practice confirms that even in the absence of international guarantees, we continue fulfilling our obligations, doing our battle work, which yields positive result for the navigation in the corridor. More vessel owners trust us. Ms. Natalia, thank you very much for the information that you've provided. Thank you for joining our broadcast. I want to thank our security and defense forces for opportunity to have events like this. Let's continue working together for our victory, and glory to Ukraine.